Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your astral projection host, Dom, and in this episode, we're going to talk about all 4 of the Insidious films that have been released so far. When the first film came out, it scared the shit out of me. Probably the first horror film in a while to do so. But let's just get straight into Insidious. Insidious Chapter 2, Insidious Chapter 3, and Insidious, The Last Key. James Wan and his friend, fellow filmmaker Lee Whannell, began writing a script for a horror film, citing their dreams and fears as inspiration for its plot. After completing the script, Wan and Whannell selected an excerpt of their script to be filmed and used as a pitch for their film to studios. With the help of Charlie Clouser, who had composed the score for the film, and a few stand-in actors, Wan and Whannell shot the film with a relatively low budget. Whannell also decided to star in the film as Adam Stanheight, one of the film's main protagonists. This short would go on to be known as Saw. After the release of the full-length Saw, the film was met with overwhelming success in the box office, both domestically and internationally. The film ended up with a total worldwide gross of $103 million, which was over $100 million more than the production budget, and led the studio to greenlight the sequel, Saw 2. With the success of the Saw franchise, in 2007, Wan directed 2 featured films. The first was the horror film Dead Silence, which his and Whannell's agent at the time advised him on directing that film. Dead Silence is based on the premise of a legend. The ghost of a ventriloquist, Mary Shaw, removes the tongue of any person who screams in her presence. Wan described the film as a creepy doll movie. It's in the spirit of those old Twilight Zone episodes or Hammer horror films, very old school. Wan and Whannell have since stated that the film was a negative experience for them, with it also receiving negative reviews from critics. The second film Wan directed in 2007 was the action film Death Sentence, an adaptation of the 1975 novel of the same name by Brian Garfield that was written as a sequel to Death Wish. The film's protagonist was a father seeking revenge for his murdered son, who was killed by a local gang. Whannell played a minor character as one of the gang members, and Wan described the film as a raw, gritty, 70s-style revenge thriller. It's my art house movie with guns. The film grossed $3 million less than the production budget, and, similar to Wan's previous film, it received negative reviews. After directing 3 films continuously, Wan took a short break from filming. Then, in 2008, Wan directed the trailer for the survival horror video game Dead Space. And it was during this time that Wan and Tobe Hooper were in talks to revive the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series with a trilogy of films, with both planning to direct. The studio instead made 2013's Texas Chainsaw 3D. In 2010, Wan returned to the horror genre and teamed up with Whannell once again with the film Insidious. The film was made independently as Wan wanted to complete control and to make a film that was marketably different from the gore that he had become synonymous with due to Saw. Wan stated in an interview, "The fact that Insidious was not being run by a committee really afforded me the luxury to make a film with lots of creepy, bizarre moments that a studio might not get." Insidious premiered at the 2010 Toronto International Film Festival as part of the Midnight Madness program. Sony Pictures Worldwide purchased the film 4 hours after the premiere for a 7-figure sum. Now we drift off into Insidious.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Hey, sweetie.
Morning, guys.
I would really like He's not in a coma. They don't know what to call it.
to Dalton's room. There was something in there with him. I know someone who can help.
We took tri-field and EMF readings of the whole house. Wiring, alarm clocks.
I don't think bad wiring is the problem here.
I want to leave. I want to leave this house. What is it?
It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
Married couple Josh and Renee Lambert, played by Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne respectively, recently moved into a new home with their sons Dalton and Foster, played by Ty Simpkins and Andrew Astor respectively, and their infant daughter Kelly. One morning, Renee looks through a family photo album with her son Dalton, who asks why there are no pictures of Josh when he was a child. Renee says that Josh has always been shy and disliked taking photos of himself. One evening, Dalton sneaks into the attic. As he is playing, a red door in the attic opens and he encounters a mysterious entity. The next day, Dalton doesn't wake up, so Renee and Josh rush him to the hospital, where the doctors say he has slipped into a coma and emphasizes that he has never seen anything like it. Cut to 3 months later. With no results at the hospital, Renee and Josh take Dalton back home. Not long after, the family starts to experience frightening paranormal events. First, Renee hears an eerie voice on the baby monitor, which shouts, "I want it now!" And she spots a bloody handprint on Dalton's bedsheet. On another night, there is a pounding on the front door. Josh goes to investigate and finds no one there. A frightening man appears in their infant daughter's bedroom, and the door alarm goes off. Josh goes around the house to check if anyone has broken into the house. Renee becomes more disturbed when their youngest son, Foster, says he does not like it when Dalton walks around at night. Renee tells Josh about the events, but Josh begins to stay late at work, and Renee explains that she doesn't feel safe in the house. Josh is sleeping downstairs when a man seems to assault Renee that night. She shouts to Josh for help. The man disappears completely. She immediately tells Josh she cannot stand living in the house anymore, and they soon move to another house. However, the supernatural activity continues in their new home when Renee sees and chases the ghost of a young child dressed in 30s period attire. Josh's mother, Lorraine, played by Barbara Hershey, arrives and explains she had a nightmare about a demon with a red face in Dalton's bedroom. She later sees the same demon behind Josh, and Dalton's bedroom is ransacked by an unseen force. Lorraine calls psychic Elise Rainier and her paranormal investigators Specs and Tucker. They are played by Lynn Shay, Lee Whannell, and Angus Sampson, respectively. In Dalton's bedroom, Elise sees a vision of the red-faced demon. Elise explains that Dalton is not in a coma, but was born with the ability to astral project his consciousness, and had been unknowingly doing so in his sleep, believing he was simply dreaming. Now Dalton has traveled too far and has been captured in a dimension Elise calls the Further, inhabited by the tortured spirits of the deceased. Without his consciousness present, his body is open for the spirits to use it so that they can re-enter the physical world. Josh accuses Elise of being a scam artist and throws her out, but later finds drawings in Dalton's room that seem to confirm Elise's theory. Josh has Elise and her team come back to attempt a seance, which goes horribly wrong. Elise explains that she's known Lorraine for decades and previously helped Josh, who also possesses the ability to astral project, when he was a child. Elise suppressed his memory of it years ago, after she helped rid him of the parasitic spirit of an evil old woman that wanted to possess him. The only way to rescue Dalton is for Josh to go into the Further and save him. Elise puts Josh in a hypnotic trance, and he is able to project himself into the Further. He finds his way to Dalton, encountering multiple dangerous and horrifying ghosts along the way. He frees his son, but they are chased and attacked by the red-faced demon, while the spirits of the further invade the real world and terrorize Renee, Elise, and the others. Josh is confronted by the old woman that tormented him as a child. He tries once and for all to overcome his fear, and she appears to retreat from him. Josh and Dalton wake up in the real world, and the invading spirits vanish. The family celebrates their victory, believing that the nightmare is over. Elise senses that something is amiss about Josh. When she snaps a photo of him, Josh becomes angry and strangles her. Renee discovers Elise's corpse and sees the photo that she took. The photo reveals that Josh is now possessed by the ghost of the old woman from his childhood, the latter having slipped into his body when he confronted her in the further. Josh appears behind Renee, and she lets out a frightened gasp. The film opened with $13.3 million, making it number 3 at the U.S. box office. On a budget of $1.5 million, it grossed a total of $100.1 million worldwide. Insidious has received generally positive reviews, with Rotten Tomatoes reporting that 66% of critics have given the film a positive review and an average score of 6. The critical consensus is, aside from a shaky final act, Insidious is a very scary and very fun haunted house thrill ride. And Robert Ebert gave the film 2.5 stars out of 4, saying, "It depends on characters, atmosphere, sneaky happenings, and mounting dread. This one is not terrifically good, but moviegoers will get what they're expecting." So, after the success of the film, producer Jason Blum greenlit a sequel, Insidious, Chapter 2. Producer Jason Blum insisted on the return of James Wan and Leigh Whannell, though a treatment script did not arrive until nearly a year later. As long as there was a chance that James and Leigh were going to write a second movie and direct the second movie, I didn't want to do it with someone else, said Blum. They kept saying they might do it, they might not do it, which was why there's quite a bit of time between the two movies. On February 2nd, 2012, it was announced that director James Wan and screenwriter Leigh Whannell were in talks to return for the sequel. During New York Comic Con in October 2012, while promoting The Conjuring, Wan described how he and Whannell were working closely on developing the story and the script for the follow-up to Insidious. Wan explained, "I think the sequel to Insidious is kind of my reaction to Saw, where for my own reason I wasn't involved in the sequels, and so I felt with Insidious I think I would be a good to shepherd it and keep it more in track with the version I had when I made the first film, so that it doesn't detour too far." Titled Insidious Chapter 2 because it was a direct continuation of the first film, Wan cited his work on The Conjuring as an influence on how he and Whannell approached the sequel, and the tone of the film. "I pulled things from Insidious that I applied to The Conjuring, and what I learned from The Conjuring I applied to Insidious too." That's what Wan said. So for me, I feel like it's a cumulative filmmaking experience I've gathered over the years. Principal photography for Chapter 2 began on January 15, 2013 in Los Angeles. Having a slightly higher production budget than its predecessor, the filming was completed over the course of 25 shooting days. For Lorraine Lambert's house, a bulk of the film was shot at a house in Highland Park, Los Angeles. Another location used for filming was the former Linda Vista Community Hospital, which was redressed as a hospital setting and used for the construction of interior sets. "I've never shot in Linda Vista," said Wan about the location. "It's kind of funny because Leigh and I have always heard so much about it. For research on the first one, Whannell came here to do a bit of ghost hunting, and I think a lot of that inspired us when we needed a hospital set. With everything in place and filming completed, we move in on Insidious, Chapter 2.
Oh, I'm coming home.
be at Grandma's house for a little bit.
If I belong, all will be
Nothing's gonna bother us. Not anymore. We have our son back.
when you're with
We are a family again.
Still happening.
What is?
Tell us, what does she want?
I heard voices in the hallway. Is there something wrong with Daddy, Mom?
Whatever it was that was haunting my family, it's not done with us.
I know what happened. I went into that place to get our son back, and something evil followed me. Get out of my head!
There's someone standing in front of you. He's talking to you.
What's he saying?
He's got your baby. 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 He's got your baby.
He's got your baby.
In 1986, medium Carl calls upon his friend Elise Rainier to help discover what is haunting Lorraine Lambert's son, Josh. Elise hypnotizes Josh in an attempt to locate Josh's friend, an old woman who appears in photographs of Josh. Elise walks around the house playing hot or cold to find the entity. After warnings from Josh, Elise makes her way to his bedroom closet and is scratched along the arm. As a result, Lorraine, Carl, and Elise agree that making Josh forget his astral projection abilities is the best thing to do. Before they block Josh's memories in a trance, Josh stands and tells someone to follow him. He points to a door and it opens, but there's nothing there. The younger versions of Carl, Elise, Lorraine, and Josh are played by Hank Harris, Lindsay Simon, Jocelyn Donahue, and Garrett Ryan, respectively. 25 years later, Josh's wife, Renee, continued to be played by Rose Byrne, is under questioning by a police detective about the death of Elise. She is unsettled by the theory that Josh is the killer. Renee rejoins with her family as they relocate to Lorraine's house. As everyone goes to bed, Renee begins witnessing strange occurrences now throughout this house. Josh, still played by Patrick Wilson, who is suspected by Renee to be inhabited by the old woman, tells her not to worry, that everything will be okay. The next day, Renee sees a woman wearing a white dress sitting in the living room. Callie, the Lambert's baby, cries and Renee goes to investigate. She comes face to face with the woman in white and is knocked unconscious. During this time, Lorraine visits Elise's colleagues, Specs and Tucker, to seek an explanation behind the strange events. They are still played by Barbara Hershey, Lee Whannell, and Angus Sampson, respectively. They show Lorraine the video of Josh when he was being hypnotized, and it is revealed that the adult Josh was behind the young Josh. In doing so, they call upon Carl, played by Steve Coulter, who listens to Lorraine's story and attempts to contact Elise on the other side using word dice. Through the dice, they are told to find answers at the Our Lady of Angels Hospital, the former workplace of Lorraine. Led through the hospital to the ICU, Lorraine recounts the story of a patient named Parker Crane, who committed suicide by jumping off the roof many years ago. The four decide that Elise is leading them to this man's house. After breaking into Parker's home, they find a black gown and veil, as well as a newspaper clippings about a man referred to as the Dark Bride, who kidnapped and murdered several people while dressed as a woman. It is then revealed to them that it was not Elise speaking through the dice, but actually Parker's mother. After Renee recovers, with Josh at her side, Lorraine arrives home and insists that she, Renee, and the kids get away from Josh. In the car, she explains the origin of the Dark Bride and the theory that the real Josh is trapped in the Further. At the same moment, Carl arrives at the house to drug the possessed Josh, while Specs and Tucker monitor from their van parked outside. The plan fails, however, and Josh incapacitates Carl, Specs, and Tucker. After receiving a message saying everything is okay, Lorraine and Renee return to the house only to be ambushed by possessed Josh. Locking Lorraine in the closet, Josh attempts to choke Renee, but is knocked over the head with a bat by Dalton, who has returned home with Foster. Renee and the children then escape to the basement, where they barricade themselves in the laundry room. Lying down in a corner with a tin can telephone, Dalton falls asleep and returns to the Further to rescue his father. Simultaneously, possessed Josh begins making his way into the room by hammering through the drywall. Meanwhile, in the Further, the real Josh stumbles upon Carl, and the two look for Elise. Finding her at the Lamberts' previous home, the two entered the house when Josh saw the demon going to take his baby. It flashes to the first film that the door was open because Josh's astral projection was trying to save his baby. Josh then enters the house and attacks the demon, but is overpowered, and Elise appears and saves him. The three then proceed to Parker's house, where they witness his mother, the woman in white, abusing him as a child in an attempt to convince him that he's a girl and his name will be Marilyn. The mother notices the group observing and locks Carl and Elise out of the room. When Josh turns around, the room is dark and filled with standing bodies covered by sheets. Upon finding Parker's mother amongst the bodies, the two engage in a fight. Just as the mother is about to choke Josh to death, Elise enters the room from the help of young Parker and saves Josh by hitting the mother from behind with a rocking horse. Elise brutally kills the mother. After the three escape the house, they are met up by Dalton, who assists Carl and Josh in returning to the real world by following the string from the tin can telephone going to their bodies. Josh, who collapsed in real time after Parker's mother was hit by the rocking horse, and Dalton wake up as themselves. A feeling of relief encompasses the room. Carl then hypnotizes Dalton and Josh to forget their astral projection abilities and everything that happened with it. Specs and Tucker drive up to a new home. They knock and speak with the parents of the house about their daughter, Allison. The couple's younger daughter asks about the woman with Specs and Tucker. It is Elise, but no one else can see her. Elise walks in to speak with a comatose Allison. A creaking noise and shadow rises behind the girl, just as Elise shockingly exclaims, "Oh my God." The film grossed a worldwide total of $161 million against a budget of $5 million, solidifying box office success. On the other hand, reviews of the film were not great. Rotten Tomatoes reports a 39 approval rating with an average score of 4.8 out of 10. And the site's consensus reads, Insidious Chapter 2 is decidedly short on the tension and surprises that made its predecessor so chilling. Metacritic, another review site, has a weighted average score of 40 out of 100 based on 30 reviews from mainstream critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Robbie Collin of The Telegraph gave the film a more positive review, stating that the scares are mostly very scary indeed, and that means the film does its job. Scott Foundas of the Variety praised the artfully eerie cinematography work of John R. Leonetti and the pervasively unsettling atmosphere constructed by sound designer and editor Joe Zubin. Foundas went on to write, "There are so many sequels that seem like mere remakes of their predecessor, with bigger budgets and less imagination. Insidious Chapter 2 feels like a genuine continuation of the characters we enjoyed getting to know in the first time around, and wouldn't all mind returning to again. Robert Abel of the Los Angeles Times, meanwhile, commented, after the pleasurable free fall into old-fashioned nightmare artistry with last summer's The Conjuring, this busy yet dull sequel feels like Wan robotically flexing his manipulation of fright film signposts with an exercise more silly than sinister. Besides a rough review and critical analysis, the studio and producers saw the money the film raked in and started working on continuing the gravy train. In September 2013, a third chapter in the Insidious series was announced, with Leigh Whannell returning as writer and Jason Blum and Oren Peli continuing to produce. Patrick Wilson was asked about returning for another sequel, and he went on to say, doesn't know where else it could go, and that Josh Lambert has been through the ringer. I think the movie sets it up well at the end, and that's great. That's how it should end. On November 13, 2013, it was announced that Focus Features and Stage 6 Films would release the film on April 3rd, 2015. The date was later moved to May 29th, 2015. On March 11, 2014, Screen Rant reported the third film would not focus on the Lamberts, but on a new family and story, and would not connect to the last scene in the second film. It also reported that both Whannell and Angus Sampson would return as ghost hunters Specs and Tucker, along with Lynn Shay as Elise. On May 7th, 2014, Wan tweeted that Whannell would direct the third film, which marks his directorial debut. In June 2014, Stephanie Scott and Dermot Mulroney were cast in the film. On September 22nd, 2014, during the Cinema Diverse Film Festival in Palm Springs, actress Ellie Keats said she had recently wrapped an undisclosed supporting role in the film. Principal photography began on July 9, 2014 in Los Angeles under the title Into the Further, on a scheduled 29-day shoot. Several scenes were shot in the San Fernando Valley at the Delfino Studios in Slimar, where the Brenner Apartments interiors were built. A first look image was released on July 22, 2014. Filming wrapped on August 18, 2014. So now let's move into the further with Insidious, Chapter 3.
I wish you could answer me, Mom. Mr. Atkins said he'd fail me if I was even a minute late again. My mom died a year and a half ago. It's like sometimes I can feel her around me. Mom?
You have to be very careful. If you call out to one of the dead, all of them can hear you.
Stop it.
What's happening to me?
I had a vision of you. A man who couldn't breathe. This entity is very dangerous.
Jesus, he jumped. Something's trying to kill her.
I'm going to have to go to where it lives. Give her back. It's feeding on her soul.
What's happening? Is she dying?
Yes. This world is your home. If we don't hurry, it's going to get her.
No, bring her back. Bring her back. You said you could bring her back. Yeah, Quinn.
I'll be waiting in the dark when the pain finally kills you.
Tiptoe through the tulips.
3 years before the incident with the Lamberts, teenager Quinn Brenner, played by Stephanie Scott, meets with retired demonologist Elise Rainier, continuing to be played by Lynn Shay. Elise agrees reluctantly to try and contact the spirit of Quinn's mother, Lily, who died a year prior. After using her spiritual abilities to reach out, Elise urges Quinn not to try and contact her mother again after sensing a malevolent force. Grace, an elderly woman who lives in Quinn's apartment building, suffers from dementia, tells strange and cryptic things to Quinn, seemingly about an unseen spirit. Later, as Quinn attends an audition for a performance at art school, she leaves the audition and sees a mysterious figure waving to her from the distance on the street and is distracted. She is hit by a car, breaking both of her legs. Now stuck in her home with her father Sean and brother Alex, they are played by Dermot Mulrooney and Tate Burney, respectively. Quinn begins to experience increasingly disturbing paranormal phenomena, including seeing visions of a dark spirit wearing an oxygen mask known as the Man Who Can't Breathe. Quinn realizes that he is the same figure that caused her accident. Sean runs into Grace's husband Harry and learns that Grace has passed away. The entity becomes increasingly malevolent as time progresses and leaves Quinn with her neck injured after the demon flings her around her room. Sean tries to convince Elise, who, like him, is still grieving after the loss of her husband Jack, to help his daughter, but Elise declines, stating that her previous visit to the dark spiritual world of the Further made her realize that an evil spirit, a bride in black, is hunting her. However, she is convinced that her fellow parapsychologist Carl, played once again by Steve Coulter, by reminding her about her successful case involving Josh Lambert in 1986, and that she is stronger than the spirits because she is still alive. Due to Elise's initial refusal, Alex suggests Sean call on alleged demonologists Specs and Tucker, played again by Leigh Whannell and Angus Sampson, respectively, who have built a following on the internet. As they investigate, Quinn becomes briefly possessed by the Man Who Can't Breathe and attacks Sean, Specs, and Tucker. Realizing Specs and Tucker are frauds, Sean prepares to kick the duo out until Elise arrives, deducing that the entity's goal is to lure potential victims to the Further so it can eat their life force. Elise decides to enter the spiritual world and enlists Specs and Tucker to help. Entering the Further, Elise has a brief fight with the Bride in Black before she discovers Jack's spirit. Jack begins to encourage Elise to commit suicide so that they might be reunited. Elise realizes that Jack is actually the Man Who Can't Breathe in disguise and orders it to release Quinn, just as she appears. Elise and the Man Who Can't Breathe engage in a struggle over Quinn before Elise escapes the Further and realizes that Quinn has to defeat him on her own. Quinn is at first at a disadvantage, but Grace's spirit sends Elise a message. Lily had left a letter for Quinn to read before she graduated high school, but Quinn never found it. Elise calls out to Lily's spirit for help, and she suddenly appears in the Further and helps Quinn defeat the Man Who Can't Breathe by inspiring her to stand up for herself and pull off his mask. Suffocating and destroying him, and Quinn is able to escape the Further. Elise gives parting words to the family, including words of encouragement from Lily's spirit. She leaves with Specs and Tucker, and the three agree to form a partnership. Because of the Brenner successful case, Elise decides to come out of retirement and work with Specs and Tucker. Later, she arrives home to her dog barking at an unseen force. Elise cannot see that behind her. Suddenly, the demon with the red face appears. Chapter 3 grossed a total of $112.8 million against a budget of $10 million. It did not make as much as the previous installment, but it still crushed its budget. Rotten Tomatoes lists it at a 58% approval rating and an average rating of 5.6 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, Insidious Chapter 3 isn't as terrifying as the original, although it boasts surprising thematic depth and is enlivened by another fine performance by Lin Shaye. On Metacritic, the film has a score of 52 out of 100 based on 26 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews just like the previous film. From Cinema Score polls, cinema audiences gave the film an average score of a B+, and Daniel Krupa of IGN awarded a score of 7.1 out of 10, saying Insidious Chapter 3 is the most focused, dark, and creepy installment of the series to date. On the flip side, Scott Foundas of Variety gave the film a negative review, saying, chief among things that go bump in the night in Insidious Chapter 3 is the movie itself, a thuddingly dull prequel to James Wan's very enjoyable and highly profitable demonic possession horror franchise. And Michael Ordonez of the San Francisco Chronicle rated it at 0 out of 4 stars, saying Insidious Chapter 3 is simply not scary, not a bit, not a whit, except that the audience will be terrified of the next stabbing of their eardrums at generally predictable intervals. With mixed reviews and a decent run at the box office, talks for another sequel was on the horizon. So let us open the door to Insidious, The Last Key. In 2015, Whannell said that the new film would take place shortly before the first film, and stated as a response to questions about Chapter 4, prior to the release of Insidious Chapter 3. I don't know, I haven't really thought about it yet, but for the purposes of this interview, I'll say that I'd like to explore the time between this film and the first film. That whole area there where Elise has rediscovered her gift, I think you could have a lot of adventures before she arrives. So I think there is a lot of room there. We've kind of established Lin Shaye in this particular film as kind of the superhero, so that would be kind of interesting to explore in other films. In May 2016, it was announced that Chapter 4 would have an October 2017 release, with Whannell writing, Blum, Pelly, and Wan producing, Adam Robitel directing, and Shaye returning to reprise her role as Elise Rainier. Principal photography began in August 2016 and ended the following month.
People who need help with matters that can't be explained come to me. These hauntings can be terrifying things. I should know. I've faced many evils in my life. This was different, though. The haunted house. Is my family's house. If we can find out what it is, we can stop stop this curse. To end this evil, I need to go deeper into the further. I don't have memories from this place. I have scars. I am gonna find it, and I'm gonna finish it.
Elise, there's someone right in front of you. I don't see anything. Be careful. You're going to touch it.
In 1953, Elise Rainier lives in Five Keys, New Mexico, with her mother Audrey, brother Christian, and father Gerald. They are all played by Ava Kolker, Tessa Ferrer, Pierce Pope, and Josh Stewart, respectively. Gerald works as an executioner in a nearby prison, and one night, moments after a prisoner is executed via electric chair, Elise begins to see paranormal things, including knowing the prisoner's name, family, and crime. Audrey tells Elise that while her father may not understand her gifts, as he is afraid, Elise can come to her for anything. That night, an entity appears in the children's room. Frightened, Christian looks for a whistle their mother gave him to call for help, but he can't find it. Gerald at first tries to convince Elise that she did not see a ghost. She refuses, and he becomes furious. He canes Elise and locks her in the basement. Elise opens a mysterious red doorway and is briefly possessed by a demonic spirit. The house violently shakes due to the possession. Audrey goes down to the basement to investigate, where Audrey is killed by the demon. Elise awakens from her nightmare. Years later in California in 2010, Elise works as a paranormal investigator with her colleagues Specs and Tucker, continue to be played by Leigh Whannell and Angus Sampson. A man named Ted Garza, played by Kirk Avasado, calls saying he's been experiencing paranormal activity at his house. Realizing it's her childhood home, Elise departs to help him. While investigating, she finds Christian's lost whistle, but it disappears again after she encounters a female spirit. Elise tells Specs and Tucker that she has seen the spirit before when she was younger. She had fled the house in fear of another beating from her father, abandoning Christian. Elise, Tucker, and Specs meet Melissa and Imogen, Christian's daughters. They are played by Caitlin Gerard and Spencer Locke, respectively. Christian, now played by Bruce Davidson, is still furious at Elise for abandoning him, and he storms out. Hoping to repair their relationship, Elise gives Melissa a photo of the whistle and asks her to show it to Christian. Later that evening, while exploring her old house, Elise and Tucker hear a whistle coming from the basement. They descend and discover the whistle is coming from a hidden room in the basement. Elise goes back to her old bedroom to get the keys for the hidden room. The pair discover a young woman, one who has gone missing, being held prisoner inside. Ted reveals that he's responsible and threatens them with a gun under the influence of Keyface. Specs then disarms Garza before Garza could kill him and pushes a bookcase over onto him, killing him instantly. The police arrive to rescue the girl, and Elise is then brought in for questioning. After police clear the house, Christian and his daughters go inside to find the whistle. Melissa is attacked by the demon from Elise's past. Keyface inserts a key finger into her throat, and Keyface takes away her soul into the further. Trying to save Melissa, Elise and Tucker search the basement. Elise sees something in the exhaust vent in the plumbing system and finds a nightgown that belonged to a female ghost, revealing her name to be Anna. She is played by Alec Reed. When Elise has a flashback to the day she saw Anna in the laundry room, Anna was alive and had escaped from the hidden room in the basement where Gerald kept her. Gerald had walked into the laundry room and pretended that he didn't see Anna, saying nothing was there. Elise then sees that after her younger self had run out of the house, her father brutally kills Anna. She comes out of the vision, and Elise and Tucker see a gown stretched and tied to a suitcase in the plumbing pipes and discover hidden suitcases containing belongings of numerous other women who had been held prisoner, including Anna's. Elise is ambushed by Keyface, and her spirit is taken into the further. Imogen, who possesses abilities like Elise's, enters the further and is led by Anna's ghost into a prison realm where Keyface is holding all the souls he's taken, including Melissa and Elise. Elise realizes Keyface has been controlling both Gerald and Ted and feeds on the fear and hatred generated by the women they kidnapped. Keyface tries to coerce Elise into hurting her father's spirit as revenge for what he's done. Elise starts beating Gerald but is stopped by Imogen and refuses to feed Keyface any more hatred. Keyface attacks Elise, but Gerald saves her before he's stabbed by Keyface, his spirit vanishing. Keyface stabs Melissa, which causes her physical body to start dying. He attempts to possess Elise, but she blows Christian's whistle. Audrey's spirit arrives and helps vanquish Keyface. They open a door and see a young boy, Dalton Lambert. Realizing they opened the wrong door, they leave the door open and find Melissa. Melissa's spirit returns to her body in the real world, saving her life. Elise makes amends with her mother's spirit, and she and Imogen return to the real world and reunite with Christian, who forgives Elise. Later, as Elise is sleeping, she has a dream about Dalton and the lipstick demon looming over him, which frightens her awake. That's when her phone rings. Lorraine is on the line and explains that Elise helped her son, Josh, a long time ago. And now, Josh's son, Dalton, is experiencing the same symptoms. Elise agrees to help, saying she will meet him in the morning. Insidious: The Last Key had a worldwide total of $167.9 million against a budget of $10 million. The Last Key is the highest grossing film in the franchise and surpassed the second installment's $161 million, and the first film of the series to gross over $100 million overseas. Rotten Tomatoes holds an approval rating of 33% based on 112 reviews, with an average rating of 5.1 out of 10. The critical consensus from Rotten Tomatoes reads, Insidious: The Last Key offers franchise star Lin Shaye another welcome opportunity to take the lead, but her efforts aren't enough to rescue this uninspired sequel. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 49 out of 100, indicating mixed or average reviews, again, for an Insidious film. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B- on an A+ staff scale, the lowest score of the franchise. Screen Rant Sandy Schaefer scored the film 3 out of 5 stars, stating Insidious: The Last Key is a solid finale to the Insidious franchise that gives series lead Lin Shaye the chance to take a graceful final bow. Brett McKnight of the Seattle Times rated the film 2 stars, saying old horror franchises don't die. They unspool tepid, uninspired sequels in perpetuity. And with the 4th chapter, Insidious: The Last Key, the saga is on a familiar path. Emily Yoshida of New York Magazine noted how the 4th installment of Lee Whannell's Ghosts and Mediums horror series wraps up its own free association illogic with an impenetrable tangle of woo-woo spirit world mechanics and lingo, while Don DeFore of Hollywood Reporter faulted the film's delivery of the booze as remaining cheap and arbitrary. So with The Last Key, the series was put to rest, leaving room for Wan and Whannell to focus on other projects and series. Though, just like any great horror franchise, we are 5 years gone since The Last Key, and now we have a new installment. We will be looking at that film in the next episode, along with our rankings of the films and the entities. Now we come to the part of the podcast where I get into my thoughts on the films that we've looked at. Insidious came out at a time when I was in film school, and me and my friends would try to see as many films at midnight as we could. Now, if you've been on our TikTok or listened to an earlier episode of the podcast, my family has lived in a haunted house, and we've had something follow us over the years. So seeing this for the first time, with this film having one of, if not the greatest jump scare of all time, when Lorraine is speaking with Josh and you see that face, that lipstick face demon appear behind Josh, I had to come home in the middle of the night. House was pitch black, and I was so scared to go inside. I'm pretty sure I just ran in quickly, turned on the hallway light. My friend was laughing at me. At the time, this was the scariest movie I had seen in a long time. Looking into pitch black when you've heard and seen strange things, Besides the real world scares, the cinematography is pretty good. The acting is solid. Lynn Shay, Patrick Wilson, and Rose Byrne really sell the terror, and the story is refreshing. Some of the ghost designs aren't the best, and I think the lipstick face demon deserves a little more time and explanation, but overall it's a solid film. I give it so much praise. It just hit where it needed to. Wan, I think, gives us something that, like I said, refreshing. I feel like this isn't something we saw before, and I like just the innovativeness. The thing with the further, I wish they would have explored it a little bit more too, but besides any of those kinds of criticisms, they're all very minor. This movie is still such a great film. I watched it the other day and it's still solid. It's still great. I give it 4 thumbs up. If I had more thumbs, I'd give it more. This is such a good, and now I would consider more like a classic horror film. Insidious Chapter 2 not only expands on the first film, but gives us more of the backstory of the Lamberts, of Elise, and the Bride in Black. I love how every character gets more development. We don't just see oh, it's just Josh, or oh, it's just the villain this time, or this or that, or just more of Elise. But I feel like every character, not every single character, but the main characters that need it get the development that they deserve. And I like that they don't try to go back on the death of Elise. Even though they found a way to bring her back, it's more of a clever workaround than I think they intended originally from the first film. Obviously, they may have had some ideas for a second one when they were writing that first one, but obviously they didn't intend for that to have a sequel, or else I don't think you would have killed off Elise, who eventually becomes the main character of the franchise. And I think having the patriarch become possessed and deteriorating is a different approach to a sequel. I like to compare this one to another sequel, Paranormal Activity 2. That one starts off as a prequel to the first film and ends after. It kind of wraps everything up from the first one. It really is these kind of wrap around the first one. This one kind of does the same thing. We get to see at the beginning this adventure that they kept referencing, this thing that they kept referencing with Josh when he was a kid. And we got to see that, and they added a little bit to it because there was something there that they didn't know was going to come up later, right? And then we get to see the conclusion and what happens after you're possessed and you kill the person who's helping you, and now dealing with the fallout of, okay, this isn't actually Josh, this isn't actually our dad, what are we going to do now? And just seeing everything. And I like that they expanded more on the bride too. It's not just some old woman who's trying to possess him. It was actually the serial killer who dressed like a woman, and he only did that because he hated his mom for making him dress up like a girl when he was a kid, and it fueled his hatred for women and all this stuff like that. And I love that we just learn more about this world and these characters, and I think it's just a great continuation of these characters that we saw in the first film. Is it a good film? It's kind of hit or miss. I know it's a little bit slower. It's not as like hard hitting with like the jump scares. I know that they try and throw them in there more, but I feel like it's the same thing like when you see the first one for the first time. After you've seen that jump scare, it's not really like it's great the first time. After, But with this one, we kind of were expecting more jump scares. I do like that, like, certain things called back, and, like, I like that the further is this kind of weird amorphous place that's no time kind of thing where, like, you can affect things in the past, and that's what we were seeing is that he was affecting his own past. But from there, though, it's pretty okay. I think they all do a pretty good, solid, job acting. I think the direction was pretty okay. I feel like there's some things you could have done more. We could have explored like maybe the lipstick face demon a little bit more. I wish they would have expanded on the ending in the sequel, like for the I like what they, and I'll get to the third one, but I wish they would have continued that story because there was obviously something there. Like when we see that kind of like Specs and Tucker are doing their investigation still, and they can communicate with. I think that we're supposed to get is that they can still communicate with her, like she's still helping them, and it would have been honestly it would have kind of been a cool continuation if we would have seen that, like where she's like, I'm not gonna move past the further to wherever else there is because I want to still help people. I still want to be here, even though like that's what helps convince her later down the line to come back and she's still alive, but. She's like, oh, I'm dead, but I'm still going to help people. And, like, that would have been an interesting thing, especially when, like, at the end, it's a baby Jenna Ortega who's in there. And, like, it would have been cool to see, like, oh, like, she's having to talk to through her to explain, like, to them, like, what this is. And they're trying to figure it out. And you could have seen Carl maybe a little bit more. I don't know. Or maybe you could have even brought in, like, another medium, too. Maybe one that like Specs and Tucker knew or something, and like they thought she was a fraud, or they thought they were a fraud, and turns out that they're not, or something, right? But overall, this one's just like okay. I do like it as a companion to the first one. Like it works really works really well with the first one. Like if you were to just watch this one by itself, though, you would be confused as fuck. Like, honestly, you'd be so fucking confused. You'd be like, who are these people? What is it? Why are we seeing this kid? Then, wait, why did we cut to, wait, who's dead? Yeah, it really depends on the first one. It relies on that a lot. And it's just, the story's So, I would give it like 1 thumb up. Maybe. Insidious Chapter 3. So what I will say about Insidious Chapter 3 is I do like that they kind of went back and they were like, okay, well, we could continue the story or we could kind of give you a little bit more of like what Elise did before between making Josh forget when he was a kid and then coming back out of, like her coming out of this like retirement state and trying to, do something better, right? Trying to do something good for people, but still like being haunted by, just the death of her husband, but also like physically haunted in this when she goes into the further by this like being the bride that she keeps seeing that's attacking her, and like she tries to help them, but she just keeps getting attacked. And I like that there is an actual like reason for her, like I just can't do it. I don't want to face that anymore. And then I do like the story with the family. Their mom just passed away. Stephanie Scott does a great job in this movie when she breaks the casts off her legs when she's possessed. That's pretty cool. I like the fact that like we get introduced to Specs and Tucker, and they're just kind of these frauds who were just exploiting kind of like the online ghost detective type of thing, like the Ghost Adventures thing, where they're just like, oh, did you hear that sound? Oh yeah, what was that, a ghost? Ooh. And like they're using this technology, but they don't know really what they're doing. And I like I think the design for the Entity 2, and I'll talk about a little bit in the next episode, but I think it's pretty good. Just creepy too, and I like the way that they did the further this time in the apartment, and like there's different spirits that are just kind of haunting this place. And overall, it's like there's not really a lot to talk about with this one. I think, honestly, to me, this one, I got to see this one for free with my friend. He had free tickets for an early showing, and I thought this one was probably one of the better one, like of the three. My opinion may have changed a little bit over time, but this one was still like, I was like, yeah, I think this is like, if you continue like this, if you continue to give us stuff like this, I think it would work for the franchise. Especially, like we get to see these kind of one-off like characters, like, okay, good, okay, so we get to wrap it up in this one movie. We don't have to have like a longer thing of like, oh, like their mom, and then it turns out their mom was actually so-and-so's neighbor, and like the Lambert's neighbor, and she was there the whole time, and we just didn't know this, and then that's why she got, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it had nothing to do with anything else. Then it's a prequel, it's set way before, and I like that we got to see like Elise at this weakened kind of state where she didn't want to use her powers, where she's like, I'm done, guys, I'm out of the business right now. But then, like, Carl comes in, and we got to see him before in the second one, but we get to see him as he was before, and he's kind of like the one who helped her get back into like helping people, and that's what affects her after she dies. Like we see in the end of the second one, from beyond when she's dead, even though she could move on past whatever she says is beyond the further or whatever. With all that, but she still wants to help people even in death. Like he brings up the thing, like, you're alive, like help these people. Like that's the thing, is like these things are like, some of them are dead. They're not just demons, they're dead people like trying to possess things and possess people, and you're alive and you can fight them. But now that she's dead, like I like that it kind of ties back to that, where it's like, yeah, even though she was alive, like now that she's dead, like she can still help people. Like she can still influence things. And I think that's where she really solidifies, this one really solidifies for her, that idea that, yeah, she can do good in this world, and she should be. And I like her interactions with Specs and Tucker in this one. Like you really get to see how they form their relationship, and why like they are so like in awe, and like they kind of like, especially for the first one, why they take everything she says so seriously, and like what, like the things that they do, because it's like she helped them to build a better, repertoire, and a better like equipment, and an understanding of what they were doing. And for this, honestly, I give this one 2 thumbs up. I honestly, I'd say this is like a solid sequel. It's pretty good, and I can't wait to talk about my rankings later for this one, because you'll see. I think you'll see. Insidious: The Last Key is it's still a prequel, but it's a sequel to the third one, but not it's a prequel to the first one, because it's set right before the first one, the one we got to see originally, and it kind of sets things up towards that. Although we were still setting things up with, and this is the one thing I could say I don't like about the third and the fourth one, is that I don't know why we need to see the lipstick face demon in these two. Like, I get seeing him like in like a second one, and like if you were going to give us more, like we are getting another sequel to Red Door, I hope to see him a little bit more in here. But why did we need to see, if we're going to see him in these ones, I wish they would have explained him. I wish the fourth one would have explained him a little bit better. Like, that would have been a great, like, way to set him up for, like, maybe she needed to get him out of a place, or maybe, like, whatever the key face is a little ridiculous, too. I think that's a little over the top. I don't know why they went with key face. I like his design. I will say that. The design is amazing, I think. That kind of, like, ripped off, like, mouth, and, like, the nose is gone. And the key finger is awesome. I think that's a pretty cool design. I like that he like puts it into, like, he like locks your voice or whatever. That's pretty cool. But just and I do like the exploration of her background, like with her. I don't know if we necessarily needed her brother there, but I like that it was like her old house, and that like the whistle played an important part because it was like that's what like he doesn't like sound, and like her reconnecting with her mom's spirit. It's more just to expand that character, right? To give more to that character, but you could have like them going through like the door. I think like seeing like the red door, they could have explained it a little bit more, like, hey, you shouldn't leave it open, like, and she's like about to close it or something, but then like something distracts her, and like she leaves it open, and then we see like maybe the demon crawl out, right, or something. I don't know. I just wish, like, I wish we would have seen something like maybe he had locked in the cases too, like some of the ghosts that we would see, or like the demon too. Like it would just explain, because I think it's the third one, like she doesn't go into her basement because I think the demon's in there or something. There's like I said, there's like I do praise the third one for being a little bit better than like the second one and this one. In terms of like story and like advancements of character and stuff, but there's just a lot of that weird stuff where it's like we don't need to include him in every movie. Like we don't need to show the lipstick face demon and all. Just because he gave us a good scare in the first one doesn't mean like you need to keep bringing him back. But if you're going to like explain him a little bit more, just give us more information. Like, why is he there? Why is he constantly like around Elise? That would have been a good thing too. Like, why is he around her? Like, maybe he was the one that was like scaring her the whole time. Instead of the bride, you could have done that. Maybe he was the one who was trying to get in this whole time, and like she was like, no, like I don't want to have to deal with this, and kind of pushed it off. And like when she went into the door or opened the door or whatever, and they saw Dalton, that's what let him in or whatever. I don't know. The rest of the story, it's just kind of like, I don't like that. Like her brother just stayed there. Like he hated living there. He hated his dad. She left him. Okay, but then why wouldn't you just get out of that town after she left? I don't know. Whatever. But there's a lot that like this one just kind of like just didn't hit, and I do like that like it kind of wraps itself up into, going into the first one where she gets the call. But there's just so much about like I think this is the one where it ends, where like his face just pops up, the red face. The lipstick face demon just like pops up out of nowhere, just to be like, "Ooh, he's still here. He's coming up, but we're not gonna explore him a little bit more." I don't know. It's okay. I'd give it like another just one thumb up. It's fine. It's like as a way to round everything up. I think they could have done a little bit better for a last film, but I do like what we got with Elise's character. I think learning about her as a child and learning about her family, I think that helps to expand her character. And, getting over that is like the trauma of that. Like, I like that. Like, that was pretty good. But then other things are just like, we've seen that before in other films. And those are my thoughts on the 4 so far. And that wraps up our look at the first 4 films in the Insidious pentology. Did these films scare you? Did the first one, second one, the third one, or the fourth one? I'd like to hear your thoughts, which you can comment on our Instagram posts that we'll have up when this comes out. We also have one more film to do, Insidious: The Red Door. That's already come out, and I'm gonna get to see that soon. So I'll get a review out for you guys next week. Thank you all for listening, and please subscribe. If you like what you hear, you can get every new episode downloaded. Have any strange, mysterious, or unexplained stories? Are they fact? Did you craft a story yourself? If you'd like us to read your stories, you can email them to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to read them on the podcast. We'd also like to post those stories to our socials on Instagram or TikTok at Horrorbox Podcast. That's where we have updates and news for you guys. One last thing, if you like the podcast and would like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It would really help out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box.